I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 2, recorded on October 20th, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is woo. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window, right down there on the video window. You can't miss it. A great way to interact with us during the show. Best way to do that, there's a login button, bottom left-hand corner. Choose the guest account. Put your name where it says guest and a number. Take that number out. You don't need it in there. And then click submit, and you'll be with us live in the chat room. About 15 of you now. We always love it when you join us live on the live program. If you are listening to the recorded version or need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, we do that as well. Contact us, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and Strengths Finder training needs. We also, you can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. And Theme Thursday by far gets the most downloads now. So Theme Thursday wins. It's a winner since we're talking about woo. It effectively is the best woo podcast that we have that's out there. It gets more downloads than anything else. Many of you have learned how to subscribe to it. If you need some help on doing that, we have all the links that are available on our coaches blog. Go to coaching.gallup.com on your mobile device and then choose the subscribe tab. It'll scroll down, go to subscribe. I have big buttons for you that you can push that'll take you either iPhone or Android, so you can do this. Really, the best way to consume the content is on your phone when you're traveling on a plane, in a car, on a train, in a plane, or in a car. Great way to catch up on your professional development, and we do that with called the Coach as well. So if you want to get both of those automatically, love to have you do it. Again, those links are all over at the Coach's blog. I should say Maika's coaching blog at coaching.gallup.com. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. She is my favorite learning and development consultant, and yes, I do play favorites here on the riverfront. And Maika, always great to have you. Welcome to another Theme Thursday.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here.
Great to have you. Well, we have been looking forward to, Maika, why does woo have to be always at the end of the year? So when we do season 3, we got to move woo up, right? Let's move it, because this is the best theme. I said it.
I was trying so hard not to say it, Jim. I made it about 7 seconds without saying it, and it is. But that's the truth. Woo is the best.
We like it because we both have it. But Kurt would say, no, we should love all 34 equally, right? In that. And so as we come to woo, we're going to have a great conversation around it. Hopefully you got a chance to watch season 1. Jerlene Mosley was on there. She is really the epitome of woo when we talk about this. But Maika, let's talk. What is woo? What does it mean? Let's go to the companion guide.
Yeah, let's go to this companion guide. So right away at the very top, you're going to see the short definition. People exceptionally talented in the woo theme love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making a connection with someone. Woo is it's social initiative. It's a quickness of making that connection. I was thinking earlier today, and I actually wrote this phrase that I said out loud as I was thinking. I think what woo is really about is the ability to quickly discover the right chemistry to connect with a person and to be able to enjoy the quest for that chemistry. It's a pretty cool theme.
Yeah, I think like empathy, this is one of those things that I don't think a lot of people talk about. Is I think those of us in the woo category can quickly read people, their body language, their posture in a few quick questions. My mother is the best at this. 2 questions, she can have a whole conversation with you that's tailored just for you. I mean, my mom is the epitome of woo. She taught me. I think I've got that theme. She taught me how to do it. Maika, I think the mistake a lot of people make on woo is they assume that since you have the talent, you're good at this from the start. And I'm anxious as we get to raw and mature that we get to maybe debunk that myth. I still think this is something you can develop and get better at as far as certain social situations of being in. You can't just because you have it doesn't mean you can jump into any situation and be great at it. I think it's one of those things that you got to work on.
Well, it's the difference between a talent and a strength, right? A talent is this pattern of behavior that you're born with that has the ability to be productively applied. When you invest in talent, and investment usually means developing skills or knowledge or experience or even just intentionality, that's how it becomes a strength. And when we talk about a strength, we use pretty powerful words. We call it, the ability to consistently perform at near perfect performance. That ability not just to say, hey, you're really really good at this, but to say, I can count on you to be perfect at this. And I think that's a different thing. So, I do think about woo as being something that you can see pretty young, though. I was first introduced to CliftonStrengths Finder when I was working with 4th to 6th graders. And I'll never forget one at the time 4th grader who, I mean, he was the kid who you would walk into the room and he would make eye contact with everybody and just give you that knowing expression that you had been seen and liked. And he would sort of have a quest throughout our time together to make sure that you liked him back. And I think that is just the best, purest definition of woo. Now, I don't know where he is now. He's certainly not a 4th grader anymore. And I think about how that woo has progressed and grown and how he's invested in it and the promise that he had at a very young age. But it's a special thing. I think you can see even, in season 1, Jerlene talks about even babies on airplanes of, acknowledging the presence of the people around them and realizing that they're there and wanting them to feel that hospitality. I love the word hospitality with woo. I think the word charisma is also there. There's a magnetism to it. So for people with woo, they're drawn to other people, to strangers particularly. But I think there's also a reverse magnetism where people are drawn to them.
Yeah, let's talk. I think there's some powerful description in the power and edge. So let's talk about that.
So again, back to your companion guide, the power and edge of woo. People with strong woo talents bring energy to social situations. They can connect with others and act as catalysts in helping people connect with one another. They have an exceptional ability to draw others out of their shells.
Yeah, this morning, I was telling you in pre-show, I got an opportunity to speak to, I think 35 or 40 high schoolers, 7 a.m., right? So this is the 7 a.m. class, very early start, a lot of kids. And for me, as with woo number 2, so Ranger woo, for me, communication 4, love the challenge of getting in that classroom and really digging it out with those kids, really pulling them out of their shell, asking some great questions. It's the perfect environment for me in a lot of ways to really work with those. No fear, go in, get it done, have this conversation. Mike, I had an hour and a half. These teachers gave me a long time to really work with these kids and to keep them, involved and activated and awake. They'd brought donuts, which was awesome. But for me, the perfect scenario, for at least for my woo, to go in, never met these students before, didn't even know the teachers very well, but this great chance to influence and like that power and edge said, the exceptional ability to draw others out of their shell. I mean, think about a bunch of high school students at 7 a.m. in the morning. You got to work hard to get that done. So a great scenario for me as well.
So Jim, when you're in that situation, do you know when they've come out of their shell? Is there a moment where you can tell that you've been successful?
Yeah, so for me, my trick is to find the other woos first. So I begin to ask some questions that'll draw woos out. We always start with strengths. Even if they haven't taken it before, I ask some questions that kind of lean towards that, and I find the other woos. And then I let them do some talking. And usually that starts drawing the others in. And so it's not just me, but it's employing in a room that size. It's deploying other woos in the room to help draw their friends out. And they'll do it. It's great. I found 3 or 4 in the room this morning very, very quickly, and I knew I could draw on them. So make eye contact with them, encourage them in their answers, let them do some of the talking, and then kind of back up a little bit and let the room take on the feel of its, for itself. Let that crowd begin. I have to do less tapping and less drawing as the other students do those kinds of things. So that's been a tactic of mine that I've used a lot, especially in high school situations, is to get some help, right? And you can identify those woos pretty easy up front. They're the first ones to raise their hands and talk generally in there. And so, for me, a great experience.
I think we need to just pause and replay your last 3 minutes, because one of the things that we find with people with high woo is they build rapport on purpose. And that if you ask people, how do you get to know somebody, they can tell you how. Now, we might have heard a little bit of your Ranger there, Jim, being able to say, okay, here's what I do, and here's the order that I do it, and here's how I move the resources that are in front of me. But the fact that you didn't just say, oh, it just happens, or I don't really think about it, or it's not a priority, or I let it be a byproduct of what I'm doing. You didn't say any of that. You very clearly had a plan, and an exciting one that sounded like it gave you energy because you were able to talk quite a bit about it. And I think that's a sign of woo, is paying attention to the necessity of building rapport and realizing that is how you get people to a better place.
Yeah, no, and you're right. A Ranger and communication kick in there, right? Those are nice. In big groups of people, there's a little bit of the ability to to dig in and do that. It's so the theme dynamics part, as we get to that, it'll be interesting to talk that through. Okay, let's dig in raw and mature. Why don't you get started? When we think about it in its raw form and its mature form, let's work our way through these.
Sure. And remember, raw is not bad. It's probably just undeveloped. So sometimes you might see raw woo looking like the need for people to like me. Full stop. And if that's all that you have, that can lead you to some pretty tricky behavior. But I think mature woo is the realization that I like people. And I think that might feed that need to be liked in return, but to see it less as a need to be filled and more as that connection because you really like or even love people, I think that maybe be a little bit of maturity of woo. Another raw and mature coupling here, raw woo says rapport is the goal. Mature woo says rapport is a means toward a bigger goal. So rather than just sitting in the enjoyment of, it's so important for us to break the ice, I think mature woo says it's important for us to break the ice so that we can get to better performance, or so that we can make deeper relationships, or so that maybe some of my other themes can come into play and really thrive.
Yeah, and then what about the last one?
Yeah, the last one, raw woo, is just about the pleasure in the moment. And I can remember, I have woo number 3. I can remember times where it really was just about that interaction. And that was the best part of my day. It was just really enjoying making a connection to another person really quickly. And that's it. I think mature woo is able to recruit and assemble. So it's seeing it not just as a solitary event where you meet somebody, but thinking about how can I constantly recruit and inspire people toward an initiative, toward a goal, toward a place, and think about assembling them and using that ability to win others over to get you somewhere. I think about my good friend Melissa has woo in her top 5, and she describes a time where she was better able to be a team member because she had met so many other people and remembered them and delighted them and could very easily pull them in when her team needed outside sources. And I see that as, wow, there is a really, there's power and edge to woo. It's not just being the person that everybody's comfortable around. It can also be sort of the nature of woo can say, it can have a really positive relationship with people who can be resources to you. And I think that makes you a powerful leader.
Yeah, and that's the perfect example, the pleasure in the moment versus recruiting and assembling. This morning, that was the exercise, right? I was recruiting them to join our high school internship program. That's really why I was there. But in an hour and a half, I only have about 10 minutes of things to say in that recruiting presentation, and they gave me an hour and a half. And so what do you do beyond the recruitment? And so we had an opportunity. Of course, I'm never short on things to think about because I work for Gallup. We've got lots of great, just bring up gallup.com and go to any of our articles. We spent 30 minutes with them talking about the Gallup Purdue Index and what was important as they're thinking about college. What are the factors that are important to them that are going to be important to them? I mean, love being able to speak those kinds of truths into them based on our data and our research to say, guys, it's really internships and mentoring relationship that matter, right? When you're in school, those are the two things that really matter. And so we get to have these great discussions around it, but it's really a recruitment exercise for me to go in and do that first. And then getting them thinking, getting them working together to think, what could be better? And that's really the me versus we, right? The me in this is like, I need to make myself feel good. Well, the we in this isn't, sure, you feel good coming out of it, but when you make that connection with the students and they stay around afterwards, that's how I know I've been effective, how many questions I get afterwards, right? When they come up and they still want to talk and they're throwing me out of the room because the class, there's another class that's starting. That's a great moment I think for a woo is in that moment when people come and then the individual talking that goes along with it. Many of us who struggle in that area of individual. We want to influence crowds or influence numbers of people. I have Relator 7, so I love the individual moments that come afterwards as well. But just a great, Maika, as you talk about raw mature, just a really great example, I think, when we think about woo in roles, being in situations. That's why it's influence, right? That's why it's jumping in there and really helping people move forward.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. It is an influencing theme. And I think that helps us really understand woo, because it's that ability to say, I'm going to transfer some energy to you very quickly. I'm not going to hesitate and worry how you're going to use that energy, but I'm just going to give it to you right here, and that enthusiasm. And I think woo, because of that transfer of enthusiasm, has the ability to affect how people feel. The end result of woo being used really well is you very quickly help other people put down their guard. And
My,
it's a
yeah.
beautiful talent.
Maika, Carol Ann, let's see, or maybe it started at Luke. He said he has a hard time. Yeah, Luke says he has a hard time separating woo and includer in that kind of in himself. So as we think about those two themes, I looked at the notes and we're not going to talk about them. So maybe quickly, as you think of woo and includer and the difference between the two as they live in the same person, how'd you separate those?
I think woo is about you're paying attention to the whole group as a whole. An includer is you're aware of how individuals fit in to the whole group, to oversimplify it that way. Woo's about that energy, the quickness of getting to know people. And yeah, you do want to know everybody, but that's because the more people, it's more about a quantity piece with woo. And because woo is really best on those first interactions, the initial breaking of the ice. And it doesn't mean that you have to have strangers all the time, but it's that first touch point, the gateway, the entry point to a relationship is the best part for woo. Includer is similar to woo in that you want to make the circle wider. You want to make people feel included. You want to make people feel important. I think there's an importance aspect to it, but includer can go quite a bit deeper with individuals. Not that woo can't, but includer I think desires to. And I think includer comes from a place of really seeing the person one-on-one and how they relate to the group as a whole. I see them play together quite often. I think if you've got them both, it's that ability to make the whole group feel important and also make everybody feel like they're part of the whole group.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good way of explaining it. When we think about some complementary themes that may go with it, what do we think about there?
Yeah, so here's where we're thinking, who might you partner with if you've got woo in order to make both of your contributions that much more effective? The first theme I think about is individualization. And, sometimes I think people have a hard time isolating the definitions of woo and individualization. What woo has the radar for, or sort of that litmus test for, is, how do I delight and dazzle this person? How do I help them feel comfortable very quickly? Individualization might also have that radar, but individualization is also looking for, what do I know about this person? What's different about this person? What's unique about this person? Woo might have a couple tricks up your sleeve that work for everybody, and that would be fine. Individualization is going to be curious about what's different about the moment, what's unique about this experience. How do I really drive home the point for every single person and never standardize that? So I think if you have woo, a great partner might be somebody with high individualization to help you intensify your ability to be hospitable, or to help you intensify your organization's hospitality or charisma or outward comfort. So somebody with individualization can help you almost strategize and predict how best to dazzle, how best to make somebody feel comfortable on that individual platform.
This morning, as I was talking with the class, it was kind of cool. We were talking about empathy for some reason, and two of the students pointed to this gal and said, she definitely has empathy, as I was describing this theme. And it was very, very cool to see that these students, like, this stuff kind of comes natural as you start explaining it to high school students. They can see, they really start relating some of these themes, and they pointed at as we think about as a complementary theme for woo, you have empathy and relator here. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think about partnering with somebody with empathy or relator, because both of those themes are going to help the relationship that woo begins. I was coaching somebody about themes themselves yesterday, and we were trying to talk about the difference between relator and woo. And very often when you're learning these at the very beginning, we'll use those two as being contrasting themes. Relator is about social depth. Woo tends to be about social breadth. And this person said, so woo is shallow, right? And I guarded the dagger that I felt through my stomach when somebody said that, because to me, shallow has a negative connotation. It's not, but woo is excellent at the first entry point into a relationship. It doesn't mean that woo's bad at the rest of it. It just means woo specializes in that first entry point. So partnering with somebody with empathy or relator, they're going to be listening for different clues. They're going to be listening for the depth of that relationship. I think about like a cross section of the earth. Relator and empathy is going to be looking closer to the core, a little bit deeper, where woo is going to be considering what's happening on the surface. And what a beautiful partnership if you could think about working together.
Yeah, and sometimes woo gets involved in activities where they can't go deep because they're trying to influence wide. And if you've got a whole bunch of people, you're trying to move in a certain direction, and you've got to get to the masses. You don't have time to go deep. And I think that's where the bias comes in sometimes when we think about woo, these theme biases that we have of, oh, it's only wide, it's very shallow. I've even said that sometimes too, that woo goes a little wider and relator goes a little deeper. And I think in that wider, we see that as a negative connotation. And yet I think it's very positive in the sense that woo can influence lots of people very fast all at the same time. That's an incredible superpower. Like you can step into a room and move people quickly. Right.
And they can do it over and over and over again without getting tired. I think that's helps us understand that it's a superpower. And honestly, I think some of this bias probably comes from how prevalent woo is versus how prevalent relator is. Relator's in the top 5 most common, and woo, only about 13% of our population has woo. So we don't see it as often as we do. Now, I really don't think that woo and relator are opposites. I know plenty of people who have both of them. They're just different tools. And, the moment we talk very often about clues to talent, how do you know that it's a dominant theme? How do you know that it's something that is in you to your core? And for me, the one story that helped me really understand my woo and the important piece of it's not just about giving energy, but where do you get your energy as well? I remember teaching a course, like a 4 or 5 day course, and it was a really heady subject. And I was exhausted by the end of the day, and I had the choice to slip out the back door of our offices in DC and go straight over to my hotel room. And I thought, that's definitely what I'm going to do. In fact, my strategic was activated, and I planned on doing that all day long. I just had my eye on, a big fluffy pillow, and I was going to be done. But there was basically a cocktail party happening if I wanted to walk out the front door. Not basically, an actual cocktail party. There was one person at that cocktail party from our international offices who I specifically hadn't seen and told, hey, if there's any chance that you're around, I want to make sure that we connect and say hello. And my woo got the best of me, and I chose not to go down the back staircase. I chose to go through the cocktail party and meet this person. And 3 hours later, I left having met about 300 new best friends, and I felt more energetic than if I had made it to that pillow and slept all night. Yeah. And I think that helps us understand that we should position our people with woo at those moments where they need to make those initial conversations, where they need to say, I can affect a whole bunch of people, and I can be affected by a whole bunch of people and not be drained by it. And I think sometimes people see woo as an outcome that they need to emulate. If you don't have it, I've heard a lot of people say, I need to figure out how to get more woo. A great reminder that that's not the best use of your talent. Define the outcome, not the strength. And then ask, what do you have that'll get you there? Because if you tell somebody without woo a story like that, where they realize, whoa, you mean you actually got energy from working a room of 300 people? I think it'll help them understand that that's a sincere talent. That's something natural to your core. And it's not something that you can really fake at that world-class level.
Yeah, that's one of those keys to talent, right? Discovering and seeing talent in an individual is what do you draw energy from? A little advice or a little clue for coaches when we think about if you're doing these big sessions and you've got tables and you're putting people at tables, and if you have their top 5 in advance and you get to select where people sit, move those woos around. Like strategically put a woo at every table if you can to help get the conversation started. You don't have to tell them you're doing that. Just do it, and they will be your fire starters. They will be the ones at the table to light things up and they'll be energized by it, and they'll appreciate you for it. Again, you don't even have to tell them that, but we've done that strategically at events here at Gallup where we've gone through themes and said, all right, who are our woo folks? Let's put them, they're the match, right? They're the ones that get the fire started in the middle of the table. So that's a freebie for the coaches.
Yeah, they could be matches. I also think about them as little beacons of hospitality. Just like Jim, you said at the beginning, looking for your woo first. If you can spread a woo throughout an event or spread a woo throughout the room or spread a woo throughout, parent-teacher conferences, they're going to act as sort of warmth givers. Think about having them. They could be fire starters, but they could also be just kind of slow radiators that help the group feel more at home very quickly.
Yeah. Get a table talking. They'll do that. They will do that for sure. All right. When we think about likely and unlikely pairs, what do we have out of the database?
Not surprisingly, Jim, you and I both have the most likely in our top 5. If you have woo, there's a 35% chance you also have communication in your top 5. These two together, I think they both have a collective nature about them. They're both about sort of this connection to people and sort of being present, being outgoing. Communication, in that the outgoing nature of communication is I think out loud. The outgoing nature of woo is I connect out loud, or I pay attention to what's going on socially in the moment. We're in this together. I think both of them sort of communicate that. It's about operating in the here and now with other people. So if you've got woo and communication, you're probably a charismatic storyteller or a magnetic verbalist. Is that a word? Communication sometimes makes up words. Those two are most likely to show up. The least likely pair is deliberative. And I think that I was trying to sort of think about why statistically this might be the least likely. And all I could come up with was, well, they're just very, very different themes. They're not diametrically opposed to each other. I think they're just focused on very different motivations. So deliberative is about being strategically cautious, where woo is about taking that social initiative. And I think the social courage that comes with woo could feel almost crippling to deliberative, or deliberative could feel crippling to woo that way, because what deliberative brings to the table is a curiosity and a carefulness and a thoughtfulness that might not jump out there as quickly as woo would. If you've got them both, I'd love to hear what it looks like. It probably just means that you quickly bring other people into your deliberation. It could be beautiful together. It just statistically doesn't show up very often.
Maika, there's some chat going on about woo and competition. And I said in the pre-show, I talk a little bit about this because I often get that question when I think from individuals. Like I say competitive statements all the time when it's related to teams winning things or teams doing things or getting the job done. And people say, where's your competition? I hear this all the time at Gallup. And it's actually middle. And so woo and competition have this idea, and I think it's laid out pretty well, but I'll say it and then I'll let you respond to it, that the winning that we do with woo is really winning over others and winning groups of people or winning people to ideas. It's built out of influence. And I'm not hurt when I lose. I just don't. I'm like, when I lose, I'm like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. Where competition really does, it's really about the winning of the thing, whatever that is, the concept, the idea, the game, the whatever. And it does hurt when they lose. And so when I think of those two themes together, they can look the same, but I think very different on the back end. I don't know. Any thoughts when you think of woo and competition? I did say competition, right?
Yeah, I really like the line in our resource guide that says woo is winning others over and competition is winning over others. There's more of a comparison nature to competition than there is to woo. Competition is going to look for how are other teams doing, what are the benchmarking, what's the clarity of the progress toward the win. Woo doesn't have that sort of necessarily have that sort of detailed comparison or benchmarking to it. So that's another difference there. Growing up, I thought so I've known my husband almost my whole life, and I really thought he had woo because we were always pretty competitive with each other for the affection of our teachers and our community leaders. We wanted to be, in my mind, I thought we both were just wanting to be well liked or somehow able to be leaders among our group of peers. And I realize now, no, he actually has competition. So what he was driving toward is that win, the first place, the trophy, the declaration of success. What I was striving for was, how do I win the most people over to feeling comfortable? been raw in me when I was younger. It might have been about how do I get the most people to like me. Now I realize we're great partners because he brings more of a baseline, more of a specific black and white tool or a benchmark so that we can understand how are we progressing, toward a victory, or how are groups of people progressing toward victory. And I can have my eye on what effect is that having on other people? How comfortable is that making others? How do we stay present and involved and, a part of the community that has a comforting or a hospitable or a charismatic effect? So you could absolutely have them both. And I think in our great partnership, we get to live with both of them and use both of them, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah, although let me bring up we're going to talk about theme dynamics here in a second. I'm going to give you a chance to do some final thoughts. But interesting, as we put the two together using the theme dynamics tool, Kurt says for you, there are always two opportunities for winning an actual contest and winning over new people you encounter. And I think that really splits those out nicely. Like it really has the two different objectives, right? Winning an actual contest and winning over new people you encounter. And so I think there's a good division between those two. When we think about it, both can look competitive. The outcomes, though, are very different. Maika, as we think about some final thoughts on Woo here before we dive into theme dynamics, what do you have for us?
I like thinking about Woo as being a social catalyst. That's part of the power and edge. You're creating a comfort and you're creating connections. So think about if you've got Woo, invest in it by looking for opportunities that you can connect other people to each other. If you are the best, it's almost like social activator. If you are the best at getting those connections to begin or getting those relationships to begin, then a way that you can deepen them is connect other people to other people who need the depth of a relationship. And then you can move on to making more of that catalytic connection for others. So ask yourself, who can you connect to each other? Think about investing in Woo through skill and knowledge. Maybe you need to develop your skill of learning people's names and remembering their names. Maybe you need to think about a skill or knowledge of how do you ask the best questions that make people feel like they're the only people in the room. How can you really polish this Woo? And I think there's a lot of ways that, and even things, out there quickly, readily available to us on being better at being more charismatic, or what I really like the definition of Woo cleanly. It's to pursue the love of another. How can you be better at courtship? I think there's certainly ways that you can expand on that and improve around it so that you get to that point of near perfect performance. Part of it also is understanding that you get energy from social situations and you're better when you have energy. So how can you set up your day so that you're around other people? I coached somebody who had high Woo, high includer, high harmony, I believe, and high futuristic. And she was an accountant who worked in a very large accounting firm. And she was really unhappy and had completely resigned herself to it being her vocation and that she needed to find a completely different job. Long story short, we just realized she needed a different environment. Instead of sitting in the back corner of a whole bunch of cubicles, she needed to move her desk closer to the break room because that energy of having people around her all day helped her get more stuff done. If you're somebody with high Woo and you work from home, how can you, connect with other people throughout the day or even work from coffee shops so that you can feel that buzz? So I think you ask yourself that question of how can you increase the number of people that you're around? And think about also, if you've got high Woo, it might be your responsibility for putting other people at ease. How can you do more of that? How can you look for opportunities? Maybe it's being a greeter. Maybe it's, speaking at recruitment events. Maybe it's just being that first face that people see every day. And maybe it is really thinking about the people who you know best, but how do they begin their day? How do you be that face that says, we're going to start you off on the right path today? And really take that on as part of your responsibility toward your own environment.
Mike, I start my day here at Gallup every morning that I'm here. I start it in the atrium. And it's just for me, it is the best way to get my day going. Doesn't work for everybody, but it definitely speaks to the Woo in me of being in the middle of everything that's going on. People walk by me, good morning, hey Jim, what's going on? I might have a couple meetings, like a couple 2 or 3 minute meetings that actually save me a lot of time throughout the day. But being, like you mentioned, being out in the open, in an open environment is energy for me. I walk away. That's how I get my morning started. That's how I get a cup of coffee. We get some breakfast out of the dining facility, and then I just sit there for an hour or two and get my meeting started in the atrium. I don't know if I really realized, I started doing that a couple of years ago, that was woo driving that and getting energy from that. And I won't change that. People laugh at me sometimes. They're like, hey, is this your office? And I go, yeah, actually it is. Welcome to my office. And if you've been to our atrium, you know what a beautiful office that is. So I'll take it. But it is I do appreciate you saying that, getting those things out in public, being in public spaces. We are energized oftentimes. Now, not terribly focused, but it does draw energy. And then I can step away from those situations, isolate myself for an hour, and get a ton of work done because now I'm energized. So that works for me as well. From our book, Expanding Your Strengths, Kurt Liesfeld wrote that, now available globally. If you haven't picked that up yet, if you go to coaching.gallup.com and look on our resources page, there is a link now to be able to really get that just about anywhere in the world and be able to purchase that. In the theme dynamics part of it, we have a web app that's available for you. We've put these are Kurt's statements that he has put together. Maika and I then let you vote on them each week. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, head to facebook.com/group/call-to-coach. You guys can vote on these every week. Maika, we set a record this week, by the way, on the number of people who voted on these topics. No surprise that we'd set a record
so cool.
on Woo. So let's dig into these a little bit. I will put them up on the main screen for you guys to see. And the first set we look at, and no surprise here, positivity 6 for me, but positivity and Woo together. What does this look like?
Hold on. I just got to say, it just occurred to me what the difference is between competition and Woo, because I was about to say, of course we did. It's the best theme. And I realized that came from Woo, which is kind of joking and almost sarcastic. And I'm saying it so that I make people laugh. I think if I had competition, I would truly believe it was better than all 33 other themes.
You might fight for it if you had competition.
I might.
Right?
I really don't. I'm totally joking, but it is the best theme. Again, still joking. So sorry, I just had to get that in there.
No, that's good. We did have, it's funny because after we said that, there was in the chat room, everybody was putting in their top theme, and no, this is the best. No, this is the best. So love that. That's why the chat room is so good and why you want to join us live. But let's look at Woo and positivity.
Great. So in the development of CliftonStrengths Finder, these two were at one point rolled into the same theme. And when I teach this in classrooms, I'll ask people, what do you think it was called? And people always try to just sort of Brangelina it, and they'll say whoop. No, it was actually Woo and positivity together were at one time called Stimulator. And I think it's a fitting piece because when you've got them both, it is that fire starter. It's not the slow burn of Woo without positivity. It's let's very quickly build rapport, be the cheerleader, the catalyst, get people on the team, get them, affect how they feel. I think what positivity does is it gives some direction to the Woo. It's not just, I want to make you feel like you're important and like you like me and like you're comfortable. I also want you to see the positive side of the situation. Positivity is a relationship building theme. So I think it changes where Woo is aimed. It's, how do I intentionally leave you off better than you were before? Or in Kurt's words, the two of them sound like this: socially and emotionally influential. You find it easy and enjoyable to meet a new person or to give hope to someone in despair. I think when you have these two together, then hope is the tool that you use to win other people over.
No, that's a great statement. I alluded to this earlier, but Woo and Relator, and I think these two together are super powerful when we think about influencing relationships and changing people's lives. But what do we say about this?
I love these two together. Some of my best friends have these two together. If you watch the Relator Season 1 theme Thursday, Brian Brim says that Relator is the marriage and Woo is the courtship. I think it's a great way to put it. It's probably pretty true here. Again, Relator's that relationship building theme and Woo is an influencing theme. So that helps me see that they're not two sides of the same coin. They're not opposites. Relator is about having social longevity with your closest trusted advisors. Woo is about influencing a large group of people very quickly. And so when you say it that way, you realize, yeah, they could totally go together. And when they do, this is what it sounds like. Socially versatile. You build broad social networks with multiple constituents, as well as deep intimacy with your closest friends.
Yeah, now add a ranger to that, and it's super messy. Okay, so let's talk about Woo and command.
Cool. Two influencing themes together. Command is I think about command as just being presence, the ability to affect what other people do based on you being there. Woo has a little bit of that too, except it's maybe a little bit more aimed toward hospitality or making sure that people follow your direction and like it. You can put them together and it sounds like this. You can win over a new person who fosters success or push against a resistant person who hinders progress. And I would add to that and make them think it was their idea all along.
Yeah, maybe that's the raw versus mature. You're adding a mature statement to the end, which is that social influence of saying it was your idea, but it really wasn't, from that standpoint, making them feel comfortable in that. We alluded to this when we talked about the likely and unlikely pairs, but let's quickly cover woo and deliberative.
Cool. I'm so happy this one showed up there. I wonder if people chose it because they knew it was unlikely, or if there's people out there who have both of them, in which case, sing in the chat room. We want to hear you. Woo and deliberative together. Again, deliberative is an executing theme. It's about how do we move forward in the most cautious, accurate, risk-averse way. Woo is about how do I, again, affect a large group of people and make them like me. When you think about them together, super powerful. It sounds like this. While you are capable of and interested in building a broad social network, you proceed with caution, mindful of potential risk. It just sounds like diplomacy there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does for sure. And I think it is one of those things that when we think about procedural, when we think about things that need to go through on purpose, when we think about groups that need to have high, what's the word I'm looking for? High structure. I think these two work really well together, because sometimes deliberative without woo won't get anything moving forward with people. And I think you add woo to deliberative and it really makes deliberative in the context of people in groups. It really makes it very, very powerful. And because the deliberative is thought through those pieces. I mean, Maika, think about those jobs where process matters. Think about those where thought matters, life or death. Things of high importance.
I like that we're somehow isolating that there might be jobs where thought doesn't matter.
I think there are occasions when things have to move very, very quickly where the thought isn't as important, if that makes any sense, right? From that standpoint, in other words, you get bogged down, think about it too much, you've missed your opportunities. And so this is very cool. I love these two together. This is, for me, I crave people like this because I like the woo side, but I don't have the deliberative and I need that. And so people who have this, who've thought through it, it's super important. And so I really love working with people like this. The last one on the list that you voted on, again, record number of votes this week, was woo and activator.
Wactivator. So two influencing themes. Activators, let's get going. And woo is, maybe let's enjoy it. Let's like each other as we go. It sounds like this. Starting something is what you do best. With initiative and influence, you may launch a new product or begin a new relationship. I think they amplify each other a lot when you look at these two. I think what woo amplifies about activator is the size of people, the quantity of people that you can influence. And I think what activator amplifies about woo is the speed. So woo is social speed. It's this lack of it's uninhibited social connection. It's a lack of fear over, am I going to run out of things to say, or are they not going to like me? It's no, I can figure out a way for them to like me, and I can figure out things to say. Activator can I think what it can bring to that is the ability to say, and I can get the group moving towards something.
Very cool. It's almost like you're describing me. Okay, let's, in 2 weeks, we're taking one more week off because we have a busy week next week, and then we're coming back around to self-assurance. We had to skip that one and stick it back in. That, Maika, that caused more problems in our scheduling among people who watched the show. I got many comments. We created a new playlist, so to speak, at the coach's blog where you can now get access to all Theme Thursdays by theme. We also have them now listed by season. So if you go to coaching.gallup.com, look in the sidebar on the right-hand side, go all the way to the bottom. There is a special playlist just for Theme Thursday. Many of you have been asking for this. And I was kind of going to wait till the end of season 2 to get this done, so I'd have a complete set. And many of you reminded me, you forgot self-assurance. Well, I did not. And it's funny, isn't that the one that we forgot? And so self-assurance is still coming in a week or so. But Maika, talk a little bit about self-assurance, and then let's look at the two of these in a theme dynamics.
Great. So here's a preview. Self-assurance is, I think about it as the ability to see yourself as an important resource toward the decision. It's, a lot of people get their confidence from outside sources. Self-assurance gets its confidence from within. We often talk about it as being this internal compass, the understanding that you are an integral part of the equation, and you can figure it out. You can rely on that piece of the puzzle. When you put it together with woo, it sounds like this. Even though you are independent by nature, you can also enlist and engage the involvement and support of others. So huge, I think when you look at them together, it's huge presence, but it's directional presence. It's, we can do this versus just I can do this.
Yeah, Mike, what's great is we know people who have all these combos, right? I mean, it's not just, this just isn't theory stuff. Oh, this would be great if these were together. There's like real people out there that have these combos that we get to learn and discover and figure out how to utilize and get to know and deploy and work with. And so let me just encourage you as we kind of wrap up season 2. We got one more week, but it's great to talk about this stuff, but at the end of the day, we actually need to use it. And so let me encourage you. Listen, I work at Gallup, and we have top 5 everywhere. And I am still learning that when I meet somebody for the first time, or even when I'm working on teams, or even if I've been working with somebody for 9 years, when we start that conversation, like, tell me your top 5. And you begin that conversation from strengths, right? When you begin it from a position of who are you and how can we use that? No matter how much you've worked with them, I think that's a really important first 5-minute conversation. I mean, I'm trying to do it more. We've here on the campus, we've put theme dynamic, or we've put theme insight cards and little instructions on some things to do in our conference rooms to have those first strengths conversations, those theme, let's talk about it. Mike, I can't emphasize that enough. We got to stop. We got to take this beyond just knowing what these things are and knowing how they are in other people. Right.
And I think the most important question is tell me your top 5, but second to nothing else is the next question you ask, which is tell me more. The opposite side of that is saying, oh, I know everything about you now after I know your top 5. Each one of us are the only subject matter expert on ourself is ourself. So tell me your top 5. Tell me which one of those you lean on. Tell me, what you've learned about those, or what do those mean for you, and give them that opportunity to express the value of those top 5 through their lens. It's just so important. We can give you some conjecture, and it's really fun to think about what theme dynamics might look like. But the real people are going to be the best subject matter experts on helping you understand what they look like. So stay the right kind of curious. You're not asking them their top 5 so that you can think you've got them all figured out. It's an opening for that beautiful relationship that says, I want to honor what's best in you, so that we can get to what's better than what we could do on our own.
Yeah. Well, that's been the beauty of Theme Thursday for me, to be honest, is I get to say, really my role, I'm the color commentator. My role here has been to say how it works for me, right? And so you have done that through this season. You have done that where you've drawn that out of me. We've talked about it. We've taken what you guys have said from the chat room. It's been so beautiful to watch this kind of happen. We get tons of feedback from you guys each and every week on how much you appreciate this. But don't forget to let people let this come from them. Don't be fortune tellers, right? Don't tell them how it's going to be for them. Ask them how it is for them, and really draw that out. Give them some suggestions. These kinds of things are really good in the context of does it feel like this or that, to get the conversation going, but let them talk. Maika, as we think about some final things to say about woo, I'm sorry, woo is coming to an end. What would you say?
I'm going to miss talking about woo. I'll keep talking about woo. So sometimes I have used the word charisma throughout this podcast. I was searching for great quotes that would help decide what woo really was. I looked up quotes on inclusiveness and quotes on getting to know people and quotes on strangers. And then I looked up quotes on hospitality, and I got a lot about hotels. But I ended up looking up charisma, and I found a great quote. It says, charisma is a fancy name given to the knack of giving people your full attention. That's by Robert Brault, Brault. I just thought that was so cool, because in its essence, that's what woo is able to do very quickly, is give somebody else your full attention.
That's great. Well, with that, we'll call Woo a wrap. We would normally be wrapping the season, but don't forget we have one more. We'll do self-assurance in 2 weeks, so that is still coming up. If you're listening to this later in time, maybe it's 2017 or 2018, we've got all these available for you at the Coach's Blog, and have built, for those of you still in 2016 and have not time shifted yet, again, built a brand new playlist for you over at the Coach's Blog. So head over there, coaching.gallup.com, look in the right-hand toolbar, go all the way to the bottom, sidebar is what we call them. Couldn't for some reason I couldn't think of that. And it's listed by theme and by season. We're excited that season 3 is coming up. Maika and I have been planning season 3 already and have some great stuff ahead for you. And so we're excited to do that. We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments, and many of you do that, and we appreciate that. Or if you'd like to be a guest blogger on our Coach's Blog, you can send those in, completed blog posts for us. We can't take them all, but we do take many of them. You can send those into us, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded video now, downloadable audio for offline listening if you want to do that, as well as the link to our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes, RSS feeds, iPhones, and Android app, all on the resources tab out there at the Coach's Blog. Again, that's coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can get a list of all the courses that lead to that at our courses site, courses.gallup.com. Send us an email, certification@gallup.com, if you're interested or you have questions around that as well. And the good news is, if you missed any of those, just pause it for a second, go get a pen, go back. It's all there, everything that I said, a lot of information that is there. If you're interested in upgrading to all 34 of your talent themes, maybe you have your top 5. When you get all 34, good time to get a coach. And good news is we have a whole bunch of independent certified strengths coaches available for you on our directory that you could choose. The upgrade information is available at the Gallup Strength Center. Again, just go to GallupStrengthsCenter.com, and instructions on getting that upgraded is there. If you found this helpful, and if you think Woo is the best theme that there is out there, which we do, we'd ask you to share this webcast. Best way to honor what we're doing here is to share it around. Maybe tell 2 people this week, or share it with them. Maybe they've got Woo in their top 5, and they would get some benefit from this. So share it, and with that, we'll look forward to the next theme Thursday, and we'll say goodbye, everybody.